What if the thing you've been hiding in shame is actually the very thing God wants to use to help other people heal? In part 2 of this episode with Jody, we're talking about what happens when we stop pretending everything is fine and start bringing our pain into the light. Welcome back to our conversation, and thank you so much, Jody, for being here with me. If you did not listen to part 1, stop here because it's so important to hear the build up to where we're at today, talking about how God is using her pain to make a difference as she is offering very unique support because she's been in a lot of support groups and she has found a different way to be able to walk alongside of her son. What if your breakthrough wasn't found in striving, but in walking? What if clarity, healing, and direction came not in the hustle, but in quiet, intentional steps led by the Spirit? Sacred Pathways is a monthly walking mentorship designed to align your body, soul, and spirit with the wisdom of God. Each month, you'll receive 12 walking lessons. These are short teachings designed to be experienced on the move. You'll also get one live group session and access to a community of women committed to walking in purpose. This is more than a routine. It's a rhythm of renewal, a sacred invitation to process life with God, one step at a time. If you're hungry for deeper intimacy with the Lord, clarity in your calling, and healing that moves through your whole being, this is your path. Join Sacred Pathways and start walking in wisdom today. Now enrolling on itsyourstorytotell.com. And Jody, I'm going to let you talk a little bit about how we got connected through a Facebook post.
Yes.
So tell me what you were posting about and what has that led to over the last few weeks?
Well, I want to start by saying that my son is still addicted. He did have a few years of sobriety. Unfortunately, he fell back into it, and he is now homeless, living on the streets of Portland. I'm blessed in that our relationship, despite the addiction, is still close. Even though when he lived with me, it was chaos and there was screaming and throwing things and breaking things and, all of the drama that comes along with trying to support an addict. And when he got out of the hospital in 2016, he was in stage 4 heart failure. His ejection fraction was 25%. And I discovered about 6 weeks later that he was back to using drugs. He was too weak to pack his own things. So I packed his car for him. I filled his prescriptions. I got $20 worth of gas in his car. I hugged him as he was standing there in his walker. I told him that I loved him. And then I turned around and walked away. I gave him up. And I was so angry, though. Anger comes from fear, right? And I was afraid for my child. And anger is just fear manifested. But I blamed God again, like he showed me this. He promised me. And yet here I am putting my son out in the streets again. And it was shortly after that he did maintain a few years of sobriety, and recently, in the last few years, went back to being in the streets. And I spent years in Al-Anon. I spent years in online support groups, and I love Al-Anon. I recommend it for anybody. Everybody needs a 12-step program in their life. It will change your life. It will change the way you view your life, and it's incredible. But the biggest thing that I learned is acceptance doesn't need my approval. And I don't have to approve of what he's doing, but I have to accept what is because I cannot change it in my power. I can't. So I have to accept where he's at, and I have to give him to God. And so many of these online support groups, they seem to have this hard, fast, cut them off, cut them off, cut them off. And there was a mom who made a post that really resonated with me. And she said, my son has been calling me and wanting to talk, Mom, and begging me to talk to him. And I haven't because I have a restraining order against him. But my restraining order is expiring. And I need to know, should I renew it even though he's got 6 months of sobriety? My heart and my brain scream, no, don't renew it. Go hug him. Go out there and get him. welcome him home like the prodigal son. Doesn't mean you have to enable him. Doesn't mean you have to, you know, pick up and where you were, but let him know that you love him unconditionally. And I started thinking about all the posts because I had lost contact with my son for a few months and was unlike him. I would get check-in texts and that was fine. I didn't have to see him all the time, but if he would just check in with me. So at least I knew he was alive. So he was alive. There was hope. So I'd make all these anonymous posts and I couldn't find him. And I finally made a post with my name because I was so desperate to find him. It was with my name and his picture. And I said, I'm tired of hiding behind anonymity. I am tired of being ashamed. I am desperate to find my son. So here I am. Here he is. Have you seen him? Please help. I had no idea in that moment what I created because all of a sudden people started coming out of the woodworks messaging me saying, thank you for your bravery. Thank you for speaking. Thank you for giving it a face. Thank you for, giving me enough courage to share my story. Thank you. And it just started coming and coming. And so my husband and I decided to, and these all things kind of happened independently and simultaneously, after my post with my name and that blew up, my husband and I had decided to go into the streets of Portland to try to find my son, Zach. And we were out there driving around on a Saturday night in some very, very dark neighborhoods, very, very dangerous places, walking up to every homeless person we could find. We must have talked to over 200 homeless people that night. They would show them the picture. Have you seen him? Do you know him? Oh, he looks familiar. I think he hangs out over here. I think he runs over there. No, I don't know him, but if I see him, what do you want me to tell him? And every single time we said, tell him to call his mom. We got back here about midnight because, we'd kind of run out of options and we were getting ready to go out again the next day. And I get a phone call and it's funny because so many people have the luxury of not answering a strange number. But when you have a child out in the streets, at least for me, I answer every number that comes up. So I never know when it's going to be him. And I don't want to miss that call. So I get a phone call from a strange number. So of course I answer it and I hear, hi, Mom, it's me. Thank God, you're okay. So we make arrangements, immediately jump up, go meet him on a street corner, go meet him. And he looked so good. I was surprised at how good he looked because the last time I had found him, he looked pretty rough. And this time he looked good. And he says to me, he goes, it was kind of funny. This guy comes up to me this morning and he says, hey, are you missing? He says, I don't think so. He says, well, your picture's all over the internet. He goes, no, that's not me. And he explained that there's a person out there that is often mistaken for him. So he thought maybe it was the other person. And, once again, he was mistaken. He goes, but then this lady comes up to him and she says, hey, are you Zach? Are you Zach? And he says, yeah, why? He says, call your mom. So within a period of a couple of hours, two people came up to him and said, call your mom. And that's how he was able to borrow a phone and get a hold of me. And so we, brought him a meal and I asked him if he was ready to go to rehab yet. And he said, yeah, I just need to do this and this and this, so let's meet in the morning. Okay. I gave him a throwaway phone that I bought so he could stay in touch with me. And I didn't hear from him again for a week. And that was rough. So, but when I posted that I found him, that went even bigger than the first post where I came out and said, this is who I am and this is my child. And my husband had this idea. He said, maybe we could start a group. Maybe you could start a group where we could go and help people find their, kids around here. Because one of the things that we heard the most from all the homeless people that we talked to was, man, I wish somebody was looking for me. And that really touched me, And so the original idea was just put it out there and, if somebody wants, we'll be willing to go out and, time permitting, go out and try to find their kid or, at least get word in the grapevine, maybe their child or person would call home. And we thought about all these different ideas, and he goes, you should call it the group, call your mom. And I'm like, oh, but what if they don't have a mom? Oh, yeah, right. Well, call your parent. Well, what if they don't have a parent? Yeah. Well, we're looking for you. Well, what if they don't want to be found? So we just kept kind of bantering back and forth. And then all of a sudden it hit me. And I knew it was God telling me, keep the light on, because that's what we're doing. We kept the light on for him. We held our ground with our boundaries and what was expected, but we never shut him out, and that's the space that I've created. And it's opposite of the enabling, and it's opposite of the cut them off forever. There's a middle ground there where you can speak your truth, where you can hold space. It just reminds me of Jesus. Like he would hold his boundaries. He would, and what was right and what was expected, but yet he was welcoming. And when people were ready to choose, then he was like, here I am, and that's what this space reminds me of. You don't have to go to one extreme. You don't have to go to the other extreme. You can hold space with love and celebrate them when they come in, you know? Um, I think that's really important. And I think that that's something that's missed. There's an in
Yeah.
between. And you don't have to sit over there next to the people in church and be ashamed that you have an addicted child. You don't have to do that anymore because there is no shame in that. I mean, the enemy uses those secrets against you, and you are as sick as your secrets, you know? And so if you're sitting over there and you're, with your shiny new shoes and your, pretty hairdo and all these things, but you're hurting and you're alone and isolated inside, that's not what God wants, you know? And we have to create a normalcy about this. I mean, I read a statistic somewhere that said something like 66% of American families have a loved one in addiction, but nobody's talking about it out loud with their names, with their faces. If you told somebody that your child had cancer or some other life-threatening disease, they would bring you casseroles or they would hold your hand and they would pray with you in church. But when you tell them that your child's been addicted, they instinctively recoil and they automatic, a lot of times they look at you like they want to know what's wrong with you. What did you do wrong? But you didn't. You can have the perfect upbringing. You can have the perfect life as a child and be loved and nurtured and strengthened and carried by your parents and still fall into addiction because it is an insidious beast, and it's of the devil. And if you keep those secrets, it keeps giving power to that addiction.
I was just thinking about that as well when you were talking about cancer or other chronic illnesses and
Mhm,
things that we think about, being genetically predispositioned. And there is such a high genetic predisposition, higher than any of the chronic
mhm,
diseases
mhm,
for addiction. And the other thing I want to say is you can get it wrong as a parent, even when you're doing your best and trying your
mhm,
hardest. That was me. I had things from my past that were keeping me hiding
mhm,
in perfectionism, wanting to keep everything looking like I had it all together, that I loved Jesus. And I did love Jesus, but
mhm,
I was not willing to be honest. I didn't even want to be honest with myself
mhm.
because I was afraid if I start looking at the things from the past, I'm not going to be able to take care of my kids. And the enemy does lie to us. I thought I will not be able to get out of bed. I'm going to be so depressed. But yet the reality was I was so anxious and depressed and just pushing through, not enjoying life. And then when I got honest and I cried out and was like, God, I can't do this. I've finally had a knockout drag out. Like we weren't fighting because it was just me voicing my dislike for the situation I found myself in. And he was so gentle. And what was so interesting, he was like, finally, you're surrendered. You're willing to come to me. You're willing to be honest with me because you have free will.
Right.
And there were so many things that the Lord has shown me in this journey. I went meeting at a big church there in Westland and for Celebrate Recovery.
Mhm,
I had a woman from church who saw things in me and she knew,
mhm.
because
Oh,
it
yeah.
was a previous version of herself. And she kept telling me that I struggled with codependency. And I was like, no. But then yet she wouldn't stop asking me to go with her. And so then I said yes just to people please and get her to stop asking, which is like the definition of being codependent. God had a plan in me being there. And on your first time attending, they have you go to a room with all the other new people and say why you're there. And
Scary, isn't it?
I was like, I can't go back there. I don't have a problem. Like, this was me in my pride and thinking, I don't have a problem. Like, these people have all kinds of addictions. And what am I going to say? But I knew I had to get up and go because she knew I was a new person. So I go in the room and it's a pretty big group. And I thought, okay, where are they going to start? Because if I could sit at the end, maybe they'll never get to me.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
And it was amazing because God broke me in the best way. The place I sat allowed everybody to go before me. And when it came to me, I was ugly crying
Mhm.
and apologized because I came into that room thinking I was better than anyone else. And what God showed me was each of those people were just struggling with something that hurt.
Mhm.
And whether it was drugs, alcohol, sex, food, or perfectionism, codependency, OCD, like cleaning and trying to make everything look perfect, it still had the same impact on those that I love. Even though from the outside, the world looked at me and thought, she's successful. Look
Mhm.
at how cute her kids are. But
Yep.
our world was falling apart. And as God has taken me on this journey, and I remember the time I told my story first, and then you're sitting here with me for the first time sharing your story. And I just thought, oh my goodness, God, I can't believe you're asking me to talk about the things that I wanted to keep hidden and wanted no one to know about me. But it was the very thing that took me to a new level of freedom
Mhm.
and then has exponentially brought freedom to my kids because when they started seeing me heal and me getting honest and me saying like, hey, mom got this wrong. Like the way I taught you to deal with your feelings and emotions is so wrong. My son was using marijuana and drinking in the COVID time frame. And I had to make a decision to send him to a therapeutic boarding school. And it was the hardest decision because I was so afraid that he and I would never have a relationship. But I knew I couldn't be codependent. I knew that I had to do the right thing and trust God with my son.
Mhm.
And I am so thankful today that, he was my second guest on my podcast and we have an amazing relationship. But what if I hadn't been willing to do that
Right.
and to hold that space? Like he was so angry at me, but I wrote him every single day,
Right.
telling him how much I loved him and how much I valued him and that I was owning my part, but he had to decide for himself what does he want his life to be like. And I'm just so thankful that you are helping people to understand that grace and truth can coexist. Because I think for so many of us, we didn't learn how to hold space for more than one thing. It was like, I either have to be angry and feel like I need to fight for justice, or I need to just be forgiving and have all this grace. And that's what led me to so much confusion in my own life.
Right.
And so I think this is such an important conversation, and it's one that I hope and pray more churches will be having. When I started this ministry with It's Your Story to Tell, I have a vision of this being part of churches where people step up
Mhm.
from the platform and the leaders are honest
Yes.
about what they struggle with. Because you're right, if we don't normalize it, Satan uses that secrecy to control us.
Right. And it binds us, and it keeps us from God in so many ways that we don't even realize. One thing that I get frustrated with a lot is that when people, a lot of times when people are sharing the gospel with somebody for the first time, they'll tell you, just give your life to Jesus and everything's going to be great. And it's going to be wonderful. Well, when I share the gospel with people, I tell them, you know what? When you give your life to Jesus, buckle up because that's when it's going to get really hard. And people that tell you that it's going to be all sunshine and butterflies after you get saved, they're selling you a fantasy because it's not true. Because you know what? That enemy, he wants you back. And he's going to do anything he can. He's going to use what he can to make you go, you know what? This is too hard. Like, no, my life was easier before. And I have this saying on my Facebook page, and I believe it with my whole heart, is you can trust God completely and still cry in the kitchen. Because, grace and pain can coexist, and they do coexist. And until we stop pretending that everything's okay and start getting real with each other, that's what we need. Because God already knows. He already knows that we're hiding that. But you know what? We're
Yeah.
being tormented by that secret because we're not sharing it and letting others help us carry that burden. And so that's part of what Keep the Light On is about. We're holding space for our addicted loved ones, but we're also holding space for each other. We're keeping the light on for each other. So I'm gonna shine my light for you when you don't have the strength or the power or the ability to do it right now. I'm gonna carry that with you for a while. And you know what? You're gonna do it for me. My son is in the streets of Portland. I go visit him at his tent, and it kills me. I spent Mother's Day on a street corner in Portland with him. You know what he said to me? He said, Mom, he goes, I found this field and I wanted to pick flowers for you. He goes, but I didn't know what time you were going to be here and I didn't want to be gone when you showed up. He goes, so I stayed. So I'm sorry I didn't have flowers for you. And I said, son, I'm just happy you're my flower today. Oh, I'm sorry that we're here. I don't care. Are you ready to come? Are you ready to come in? Well, blah, blah. And I said, okay. And I hug him and I tell him I love him. And I walk away and I give him to God every time. I just give him back to God, give him back to God, give him back to God. So that's all I can do because I cannot control what he does. God showed me his ministry that he has for Zach, but I have nothing to do with it. That's between Zach and God. All I can do is love
So
him where he stands unconditionally, without enabling, without giving him money. And all I can do is just wait and love.
which is how Jesus treats us. It's
Exactly.
how he showed you after having the vision and going through what you did with the surgery that he said, I have always been here. I've always had a plan, and he just needs us to surrender. And surrender is not easy because we were created in the image of God, but we have a sin nature. I think of the cartoon with the devil and the angel, like pulling at you in different directions. And it's hard. When I was walking through this 2 years with my daughter, and I had so many fears, and it was very difficult to surrender because God
Right.
asked me to surrender her to death.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, how could you ask me as a mother to surrender her to death?
Well, isn't that
And
the
he
paradox of
said,
the
my
gospel?
father did.
Yes. Right.
Exactly.
That's
He was
exactly.
like, well, my father did that. And, it was at a conference and John Bevere was speaking on the awe of God and happened to be the story of Abraham and Isaac. And I remember just the tension and sitting with it. And then he said, what if death saved her?
Mm-hmm.
Because I knew she was saved. She was praying for healing, and yet she got caught up in some really hard things.
Mm-hmm.
I knew when he told me that, okay, God, you're right. I don't know what is ultimately the best and how you see all of that. And so I'm going to choose to trust you. Now, I joke, but I think I probably surrendered over 700 times in that
Oh,
2
yeah.
years because it was like,
Well, that's
I
the
want to pick
thing.
it back up. And then I'm
Right.
like, nope, okay, I'm laying this back down. You will have that. I know I want, where I'm like, I just surrender and no longer does it bother me or am I
Right.
affected by it? But that's not the reality of what our experience is. And so I used to think, well, I guess I just didn't surrender right, or I didn't get it right, or I'm failing. And God's like, no, this is hard. Like,
Right.
you're going to have to just daily do this. He says, daily pick up your cross, which is dying to yourself, and follow me.
Right. And that's the other thing too, is that that's why I want to normalize this. I want people to not be ashamed anymore because that shame that you're feeling and that isolation and that heartbreak, that's not from God. And when
Right.
you become bold enough to say the words and speak it, you take all of that power away. All of that shame. And when you have those moments when you're struggling, if somebody knows, they can help you. And
Just like all the people who responded on your Facebook, or when I finally admitted it, God was able to start moving
right,
and bring things into my life to actually bring me out of that pit
right,
and bring me into a new place. And so the enemy wants you to think that everyone's going to turn against you. They're going to talk behind your back. And most of the time, people come up to me and say, thank you. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for holding space for other people's story. I feel like you were talking directly to me. It's not what the enemy is making you believe you're going to experience. If you had one thing you could tell people today so that they could start on this journey, what would
mhm.
it be?
God already knows what you carry. Say it out loud. If you say it out loud, it takes all the power of all the shame away. So share it with somebody. Do not be ashamed that you have an addicted loved one. It's a disease. Do not hide in fear anymore because God already knows how you feel. And He's just waiting for you to let go of the chains because you have the key to unlock them. Just be honest.
That's so
That's
good.
about it.
Honesty and that speaking those words out loud is the shining the light into the darkness. And the darkness doesn't like the light.
Mm,
So then you just keep shining it and you bring in more people
right.
and you shine even brighter when you come together. Thank you so much, Jody, for being here with me, for being honest and vulnerable. I know that there is people listening that are going to say, I can do this because Jody did, because Megan did. And that's what we hope for this conversation, that somebody is going to take a step of honesty today. So thank you again
Thank
for
you.
being here.
Just remember, everybody, you are not alone. No matter what the enemy tries to tell you, there are people. We're here. God's here. You're not alone.
Yes. Jody and I are here. We are willing to shine light into your darkness. I will link Jody's Facebook group so you can get connected with her if you are walking with someone or you have been the addicted person, because that story is so important too, because it helps others understand that what happens in your brain and your experience so that they can be more effective in loving the ones in their life.
Well, the one thing you just reminded me of that actually. So thank you for saying that. The one thing that is I've noticed is different about this group, Keep the Light On, is we have both sides in there. And I've not seen that in other groups. And so we have those that are recovering and we have those that are suffering and we have those that are loving. So we have a really great mix of people. They're all talking.
Which is so important. If we can talk, we can meet each other and hear where they're at. And hopefully, people who are struggling, they just need to be seen, loved, and feel connected to, so that then the Holy Spirit can move and do what
Absolutely.
only He can do. Check out It's Your Story to Tell. We have lots of free resources available. So if you are on a healing journey or you are looking to get connected with a coach, don't let finances be something that holds you back, because we do scholarships through the nonprofit so that you can have the support you need, because this is not something that you can do alone. You need community. We were created for connection, and so you can check that out. Make sure you subscribe. We don't want you to miss out on an episode with powerful conversations like the one we've had today. Thanks so much for being here.